Hey everyone, Colin here from the Daubers, and last week I was looking at Godzilla King of the Monsters on my Earth build. We had the Throzilla. This week we're going to look at them a little bit more traditionally, but we're going to go on Chaos. So we'll just dive straight on in. The Godzilla King of the Monsters is a 6-hand size character with 34 health, has static text. Your attacks with printed difficulty 5 or greater get plus 3 damage. We're obviously running a difficulty 5 or greater package just for that free damage. The enhances spend the momentum. Your next check to play or block gets plus 2. And the once per game first form is commit, discard 4 cards, destroy all foundations. It is only playable if there's 10 or more foundations in all stages combined. But yeah, it's awesome. All round great character. Jumping straight into the actions, we are obviously running 4 city rampages. It's so good. It's so good. It just sets up. The form says your checks to play attacks with printed difficulty 5 or greater get plus 2 for the rest of the turn. It's just solid, and while it's in the pool, your attacks get plus 1 speed, plus 1 damage. That's also going to play a lot of effect later on when we go through these attacks as well. So let's dive into the attack pack. So we're going to dive into the attack package. We're going to start off with the absolute MVP of this deck, which is one of our locals' favourite card, which is Earth Beast Golem. So this deck was essentially made with how well can I operate this card in the deck. Turns out pretty well. So Earth Beast Golem is a 5 mid for 3 damage. We're going to get that straight to 6 with Godzilla, and it's got 2 enhances. The first one being both players add the top card of their deck to their momentum, and the second enhance being this attack is plus 1 damage for each momentum both players have. So already, if this is the first opening attack, we're going to get ourselves a momentum, we're going to get our opponent a momentum, we're going to be able to get 2 damage off of that, and then potentially just spend that momentum for plus 2 to the check for our next attack. This card is such an absolute setup. It's amazing. So we're running 3. I was really tempted to put 4, but I was trying to find space for a couple of other cards in it, so I thought 3 is probably the nice number for this specifically. So leading up to that one, that's a kind of setup one. The next one that I'm running that's a bit of a setup scenario is Zero Satellites. It's a 5 high for 5. It's got 1 enhance that we actually care about. The bottom enhance we don't. The first enhance is if this attack deals damage, add 1 card from your discard pile to your momentum face up. So we have uniquely 2 more attacks that are going to be very obvious, and then either way, getting momentum so we can spend it for that dealing damage is just awesome. We love it. Such a good setup card, but it's 5 high as well, so it's inherently fast as well, and it's going to put out a lot of damage. So it's also very good. So what we're going to do is quickly jump into the 2 obvious attacks that you probably already know. We're running 4 copies of Black Abyss and 4 copies of Armour of the Wolf. So we'll jump into Black Abyss first, just because I love this on also Earth as well. I think this is very utilised in Godzilla. So Black Abyss is a 5 low for 6 damage with an enhance. If this attack deals damage, your next check to play an attack gets plus 1. The fact that if this does damage, our checks get easier is so good. Like, this card is just crazy good. Like, it's actually far too good. The second enhance though, and this is where Zero Satellites came in, the enhance from momentum, which is a once per turn, is this attack gets plus X speed plus X damage. X equals the number of copies of Black Abyss in your momentum. So the idea is if you see them in the bin, Zero Satellites should be able to hopefully do some damage and get them back into your momentum, where you're going to now get that plus X scenario going off. It's very, very powerful. I mean, it's just going to top over damage, where we are going to be putting people out of the game very early. So the other attack obviously is the 4 copies of Arm of the Wolf. It's obviously got the same bit of static text. If it goes to momentum, it goes face up. It's 5 mid for 5 damage, so yet again, another very fast base attack as well. And it's got momentum. This attack gets plus X damage, so obviously with Zero Satellites, we might be able to cheek it out there, get a little extra damage on our attacks. And then the response though, which is where this can come into a bit of its own when we play it as an attack, is after your rival passes on enhances, this attack gets plus 1 damage. So the idea there is if we can keep doing some extra bits and they have to pass, we're just chipping more damage onto this, which is already 5 mid for 8 when it just comes out. That's before things like City Rampage might come into play, things like Black Abyss might come into play. There's so much things to it, which just, these are really fast attacks and they're all hitting for quite heavy numbers. So these 2 are the ones that we're looking for with Zero Satellites. Next up we have 3 copies of Blue Flame Torment. So this one is 5 low for 5 damage, and it's got a response in card pool, which is flip, discard 1 momentum. After your rival makes a check, it gets -2. Failing that check will not end the combat phase. Honestly, the fact that it's like you can have this in the pool and then potentially hack their checks later on blocks and stuff like that is mental. Like, it's so good. Like, this is going to allow us just to force some damage through, you know, especially when we get to like the Black Abysses and stuff, or maybe the Zero Satellites and setups and stuff. It's very useful, and because we have things like Earth-based Golem and stuff, we can generate that momentum relatively easily as well. So overall, it's a very strong response. The enhanced though is also very good. Your rival checks against a 6. If they fail, this attack gets +1 damage, and your next check to play an attack is +1. You may play this enhanced 2 times this enhanced step. So if we do this and they check poorly, you know, we're getting 2 more damage on this. Bear in mind, if with Godzilla it's up at 8 damage, it's now up at 10, and we would get +2 to the next check. We are very much improving our check scenarios where checking 3s do not feel rough. Like, it's so good. Now, the last heavy hitter is obviously, again, probably everyone's running this, but Walk the Dog. It's the 8 diff, 6 low for 6. With this attack, it's -1 difficulty for each committed foundation in your rival stage to a maximum of 4. So obviously, with everything being so fast, we expect this scenario to happen where we're going to have a lot of committed boards, and this is going to come out on like a pseudo 4. Bear in mind, it still gets all the bonuses because its printed difficulty is greater than 5. So it's still also very useful. So the enhance on this one is draw 1 card for each copy of Walk the Dog in your card pool. Obviously, this could just go to, we have 3 copies, so the best you're ever going to get is like 3, but even then, it's also got powerful 3, so it's got an outlet for more damage to go into, and it has stun 1, so obviously it sets itself up as well a little bit for further ones. So it's all round, it's such a strong card, but I don't think anyone's going to really deny that as such. So I thought 3 at the time, I think, just feels like the right number. You could probably push for 4, but I don't know how heavily it'll commit early for that to work if you get hit with them all early on as well. So I've kind of went with 3 as my kind of safe number on it. So on to the foundation lineup. First of all, we're running 4 copies of basic training. The response is once per turn. After you play an attack, it gets +1 damage. Just throwing extra damage on our attacks is always going to be worth it. Early on, it's going to force blocks. Later on, it's going to allow extra damage through. The deadlock response is after an attack is played, it gets +1 speed, and that is playable well committed. The awesome part about this is if they do build into deadlock, we are going to make things a lot faster. It's going to just help us for that scenario being made. The next one we're running is 4 copies of Easily Excited. The response on this one is once per turn after an attack is played, it gets +1 speed and gains taunt if it doesn't already have it. But really, we're just looking at the +1 speed. Again, everything being so fast on base level, having a couple of these out and just giving them extra speed and extra damage if we basic training as well, it's just all round fun. Going to work out pretty well for us. Looking at next, we're going to look at the 3 cards that essentially say draw. Starting off with the 4 copies of Fearsome Transformation, it's got Enhance Flip, draw 1 card. If you have no momentum, you discard 1 card. We have enough ways to actually generate the momentum quite comfortably, where I feel as if this just says flip, draw 1 card. We don't really have to worry. But worst case scenario is just draw and discard, so you're getting a bit of filter. Next on up, we have Dangerous Combatant. I'm running 3 copies of this one. Enhanced Flip. If your rival has more foundations committed than ready, draw 1 card. This one early on isn't going to activate as fast, sort of thing, so I've kind of went with 3, thinking that's a nice number for it. But later on, it just is going to say draw, because everything's fast and everything's going to need blocked because of how fast and strong they're doing the damage. And then the last one, we're running 3 copies of Chivalrous Competitor. So the enhance on this one is flip, both players draw a card. I'm still not too bothered about them getting a card in this scenario. This allows us to turn on extra cards very fast, and having the ability to draw really fast is just going to help us continue our game plan. Your opponent having a card in hand isn't going to be too much of a bother because of how fast a lot of our stuff is. So there's the 3 cards that pretty much just say draw. Next on up, we're going to look at the other 2 one-diffs now. So the big one that I like the most in a lot of my decks recently has been Struggling with Studies. Very powerful. The enhance is flip. If this is your rival's 3rd or greater attack this combat phase, add 1 card from your card pool to your hand. I like this because it allows us just to utilize the proper block that we need early on, knowing that we can just pick it back up if they go for an attack run. It also kind of makes it that if you have to use an attack as a block and stuff like that, you can feel relatively safe at being able to pick it back up later on as well if they go into an attack string. And then we're running 2 copies of it again, simply due to the fact that I don't think the game's going to last that long. So it's not the biggest concern about picking up extra attacks or foundations and stuff that we play as blocks. The response on it though, before one of your foundations would be flipped due to a rival effect, flip this foundation instead. I find this with some of the draw mechanics as well and some of the other stuff we've got could be more the response to save them as well. So overall, I've got 2 in it. You could argue maybe 3, but I was trying to run this as close to 60 as possible. So I've kind of like taken some elements that I prefer personally and went with them. So looking at the other one diff, we're looking at 4 copies of Creeped Out. The enhances commit your check to block this attack is +2. I just like the idea of us improving our checks a lot as such. It is essentially saying -2 speed, but for the most part it becomes less interactive. The response on it is also very useful. Flip, after a breaker ability is played, it gets -1 to its rating. One of the biggest things that could hit us hard is somebody hitting us with breaker. Even just breaker 1 becomes a nuisance with math. So being able to respond and flip this and minus it, I mean, if they hit us with a breaker 1, it's breaker 0 now. Like, let's keep going, you know, Godzilla loves it. So that's why I've kind of opted for 4 of them. Coming on now to the 2 diff foundations, we have 2 copies of Titanic Combat. I feel as if like every deck I ever play on any of these symbols is going to be running Titanic Combat. I just think this card is crazy good. The response is commit. After you take damage from an unblocked attack, build the top card of your deck face down committed. So early on we can take hits. We've got 30 odd health. We're fine to take a few hits. Being able to commit this in their turn and build is very good. It's just going to give us an easier access to committing stuff and running ahead with our attack package. The enhance on our attack is commit. This attack gets +2 damage. So again, we're already crazy on damage, so let's just give us more. And your rival commits 1 foundation. So now we have an access to something that is also going to commit and give us damage. So it's a 1-for-1, but we get 2 damage out of it. I love it. I've really wanted to put more in the deck, to be fair, but I think 2 was just the right amount. Next on up, we have 3 copies of Nice Try. This is another one of those. We've got Creeped Out to give us improved checks, and we can start to kind of mitigate some speed with the enhance here, which is just -2. It's very powerful. The response is also really good. After your rival's combat phase begins, ready this foundation. It's playable while committed. The thing I like about this is it gives us an easy card to commit in our turn to pass checks, knowing that it can ready up. It means that we have everything else kind of more free flowing. Next up, we have 2 copies of Broken Psyche. This card has been the bane of my life, and a lot of people have played locally, so why not run 2 copies myself if we're playing a Chaos version of Godzilla? So the main thing is the enhance, flip, discard 1 momentum, change this attack's damage to 2. I mean, some attacks are just going to get crazy and then just set them to a blank 2. We can then take that 2 damage, respond with things like Titanic Combat. Lots of stuff going on there, which is perfect for us. The fact also we're going to generate momentum pretty easily. Within reason, we should be able to access this. I think 2 is the safe number. I don't think we want to be like constantly looking at the idea of throwing all our momentum away to take attacks down to like 2 damage, but at least it's there. The response is remove after you take damage from an unblocked attack. Add 1 card with a check value of 6 when you discard pile to your hand. Play well committed. I don't even know if it's sort of playable with like league interview and stuff like that, but I think that was about it, to be fair. It's really there just for the enhance. Talking about league interview, we're running 2 copies of it. It's got a first form, discard the top 2 cards of your deck. Your next check to play an attack gets +1. So again, discarding 2 just to get +1 and improve those checks early on as well just means that it's always fun, especially if we ever check 3s. You know, checking 3s is sometimes the worst feeling. With us playing Godzilla, it's kind of cool because the +3s are the 3's a bit of a lie because it's usually going to get pluses to the checks and stuff like that, so we should be alright. The response on this though is flip. After you make a check to block, that check is +1. Again, we're just messing with checks on pretty much every card, so it's very cool. Very, very cool. Next up, we have 3 copies of Adaptable. So Adaptable has an enhanced commit. Your attack is +1 speed for each of your momentum to a maximum of 3. I do like the idea of us building some decent momentum up and being like, right, cool, let's commit for +3 speed on all of these attacks that are already really fast. Pretty good stuff. The deadlock in hands is flip. Your rival loses 1 health for each of your momentum. This effect can't reduce them below 1 health. I also like the idea of if they do build to deadlock, being able to potentially just cost them life late on as well. So yeah, then that is the deck. That is our Chaos Godzilla build. So I like this. I think it's doing pretty well so far. Had a couple of test games with it. It's been quite fun to play. And yeah, next week we're going to be looking at the water build. I think that one's going to be probably the most interesting. I think it's probably the least looked at symbol between the three as well. So let's see what we come up with for that. As always, I don't build sideboards for these things because I'm building them for like locals in mind and stuff. So that's always going to change. Plus, at the same time, I also like to see what you all come up with. So I'd like to see in the comments below what kind of sideboard you think this could need. What cards could even just be like swapped out and stuff as well. It'd be cool to see from it. So yeah, thank you very much everyone, and I will catch you next week. Bye everyone.